This is part 6 of my Tekno EB48 SL build series. Basically, it's all done. The electronics are mounted, wings mounted. I'm gluing tires right now, and I'm painting the body. I'm waiting for the paint to dry. So I figured I'd just kind of wrap this all up for you and tell you my thoughts so far. So a quick thing about the body. As with most bodies that you get these days, it does come with some masks for the windows, but those masks are really just pre-cut masking tape, and the masking tape is actually quite thin. I find that a little disappointing. If you look at like the Proline bodies, the most recent one that comes to mind for me is the Mirage SS body for the vintage RC10. That has these nice kind of thicker, almost sticker-like masks, so you can peel the thing off and you can really play around with it to make sure you align it right before you set it down. The masking is basically masking tape that they give you for the Tekno body, and it's quite thin, so once you peel it off, it kind of wants to roll up and stick back onto itself, and you run the risk of making a mess if you're not careful. So I'm not too crazy about what they give you for masking the windows. It's not that great, but you can get it done. Anyway, minor complaint, but if they're going to give you a full decal sheet like this guy, right, with these nice sort of, I assume, kind of thick decals, they could at least give you window masks that are of the same kind of thickness, and they don't do that. So a little disappointing. As far as mounting the wing goes, I suppose it mounts like any normal 1/8 scale wing. The only other wing I have to compare is my Hot Body's VE8 when I used to have to mount the wing for that. And it's very similar. You have a screw on each of these little wing buttons, and it mounts down into the wing tower. And on the inside of the wing tower, on this side and on this side, from the inside towards the outside, there's these little housings that you mount a 3mm lock nut. And because the wing tower is already put together and it's a tight space, it's a real pain to just kind of fit the lock nut in there and get it to sort of snap in place. Again, I don't know if all A-scale wings are like that, but that's what I've experienced so far with this and with the Hot Bodies. Kind of a pain, but it is what it is. It holds nice and secure. There's no slop in the wing or anything like that, so that's fine. To mount the electronics, they're basically these two plastic trays, one on either side. This side, of course, holds your battery. This would hold a stick pack battery with 3 Velcro straps. Over here is just empty space. I assume this is for if you had the A-scale Tekno, like the Nitro car. This would be for the servo to run the clutch and your carburetor. But this is electric, so that's just empty space. On this side, of course, we have all the electronics: the servo, the speed control, motor, receiver. Receiver goes in a receiver box, and the cap to the receiver box has 3 little holes here, which are kind of cool for you to mount your A and B transponder mount. So that's kind of nice. There are 2 holes in the box. There's one on this side to take your transponder cable and route it into the box from this side to connect to the receiver. There's a hole on this side where you run your servo and speed control wires into the receiver box from this side. I think this is nice because that avoids you having to basically crowd up all of your wires through one hole and try to make everything fit nicely. That's kind of the problem I had with the SC10 4x4. There was only one hole on one side, and you had to kind of scrunch everything in place, and they had this little rubber seal that you had to put on, and it was just a royal pain. The 2 holes thing, I think, is a nice little touch. Servo mounts like a servo. There's really nothing to report there. It's pretty straightforward. Speed control, I'm running a Tekno RX8. These are the electronics I directly just pulled out of my SC10 4x4. So nothing special about the speed control. There's nothing special about the installation or anything. For the motor, this is the Pro 4 4000 kV. It's not the Pro 4 HD, which has a longer can. This is the original Pro 4. If you had the longer can, though, you may be able to tell the spacing between the can and the speed control with the 540 sized 4-pole motor is kind of small. It's already hard enough to get in there and plug in the sensor harness. Basically, I had to mount the speed control with Velcro, which I always do anyway, and I just have to like yank this out just to have more hand space to get in there and mount the sensor harness. So if you have, say, a 550 size short course motor, that gap will be even smaller. So just make sure if you're going to run a larger short course motor that you mount your speed control with Velcro, so you can just pull this out, mount the sensor harness, put this back in. As far as the pinion gear selection goes, this is probably my I guess if I had to complain about something, I complain about this. I have yet to run it, of course, to see how hot this gets with the gearing that I've chosen. So we'll just have to see. But I did get a set of Mod 1 pinions, 12, 13, and 14 teeth. I looked online and just tried to see if I can find any documentation on forums or whatever for gearing recommendations for this chassis, which is really the same as their four-wheel drive short course truck. And I had seen a wide range of pinions depending on the size of the track, etc. So I based on this motor, I got 12, 13, and 14 teeth. Team Novak sells in sets of 3 hardened steel Mod 1 pinion gears. That's the best value I've been able to find so far, so I'd recommend picking those up. They're pretty good. But in any case, back to the point, I tried the 13-tooth pinion first just to mount it and see how it goes. I can get mesh to the spur gear, but I have to push the motor mount all the way in. And even with it all the way in, the gap between the pinion and the spur gear teeth is it's a little too large for comfort for me. You still get mesh, but it's not it's pretty loose mesh. So you could theoretically run a 13-tooth pinion gear, but I wouldn't recommend it. So I went up to the 14-tooth pinion, and again, I have to push the motor mount all the way in, but it does mesh nicely. It's not too tight, it's not too loose, it's just fine. But as far as I've been able to figure out, a 14-tooth pinion is as small as you can go on this chassis. Maybe there's a way to go smaller than that. I just don't know. But as far I just pushed this in as far as it would go, and 14-tooth is the smallest I can go on the pinion without having a mesh that's loose. Okay, so that's my comment on it. And because of that, this is a 44-tooth spur gear and a 14-tooth pinion. I don't know what the final drive ratio is. I'd have to go figure that out. But because of this, I didn't want to run my 5200 or so kV motor. I fear it might get a little hot, so I went to this 4000 kV motor, which would be better perhaps for this kind of gearing. There's only one spur gear selection. Tekno does not make other spur gear sizes for the center diff. And it makes sense too, because this spur gear has small clearance between the cap here on the center transmission case and on the bottom of the chassis. So they cannot offer any spur gear variants. Ideally, if you had a bigger spur gear instead of a 44, maybe a 48 or a 52 or something, then you can actually start playing around with running smaller pinion gears and higher kV motors maybe. So again, we'll just have to see how this goes. But that's something that I had some trouble with. Yeah, so that's all the comments I have for now. And of course, after I run this, I'll give you some initial impressions, and hopefully if I get to run it enough for the outdoor season, I'll have enough wear and tear on this to give you a midterm or a long-term review. So I hope you found this informative, and this was a good build. No build is perfect. Every build has its problems. But overall, I'd say this is a really good car. A lot of fun to build. So thanks for watching.